And we are live on College Band Radio, all college band, all the time. Welcome, everyone, to episode 6 of this first season of College Band Radio. We have a very interesting, very informative, a very unique show for you guys this week. You can stay tuned to the end for college football picks, as we always do. But today, or this week, I guess today is a very special day for one of our CBR members. And it's a very special episode because it is Hannah's 22nd birthday. Hannah, first off, happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Second off, how are you doing? Because you seem in quite a good mood right now.
I am in such a good mood. Like, today was a great day. Like, it rained. I love rain. Wearing my new sweatshirt that I bought myself. Like, I got this epic You and I sweatshirt. Burned my new candle from Bath and Body Works. I'm doing great.
Yeah, so Hannah's she's doing great. And she's not technically part of the news segment, but we wanted to have her on to at least wish her a happy birthday because, it wouldn't be right to not do it any other way. So I know that if any of you guys want to quickly wish her a happy birthday, and then we can let Hannah go because I'm sure that you have a lot of things planned with your friends tonight.
Yeah, happy birthday, Hannah. Have fun later.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Thank you, everybody. Feeling very loved. It was like a weird birthday this year, obviously, since we're in a pandemic. But you know what? It was good. Having a great time. Taylor Swift birthday. Because I am feeling 22 now, so... Yeah, go Cats, of course.
All right, well,
go Cats.
Hannah, we don't want to keep you on here too much longer because, the day is yours to celebrate. So if you want to jump off now.
The night is young.
Yeah, the night is young. So you want to jump off now and go hang out with your friends and all that. We just wanted to have you on to wish you a happy birthday and
Thank
then
you.
go on with the rest of the pod. So.
Goodbye, everybody.
All right, see you later, Hannah. All right, so again, happy birthday to Hannah. 22nd birthday, huge deal. I just had my 22nd earlier in the year, and my friend tried to play that same Taylor Swift song for me, and I did not have the same reaction. I can tell you that. But, I mean, I don't think that
Good song.
Yeah, but I'm just not a Taylor Swift fan, so. Sorry, Tay. It's just not about
If she's listening.
Yeah, she's definitely listening. Come
Sorry.
on. You know that Taylor Swift is definitely a part of our listener base. But yeah, so this week, a couple interesting things happened. So, the election has essentially been decided, more or less. Everything's been finalized. I know things are still shaking out in terms of what is going on in the current presidency, and after all of the social unrest that has gone on, the social justice activism that has taken place over these last few months, and we kind of wanted this episode to talk about social justice, about the different things that have been going on from a marching band standpoint. People, marching bands changing what they have done with fight songs or with other pieces in their repertoire. They've decided to not play anymore due to possible racist, sexist undertones, homophobic undertones. So we're going to get into that a little bit later, kind of talking between us three, and then that's what our main segment is going to be, our special guests who were really, really great to talk to. We will talk to them more about that. But first off, people ran on a football field after a football game, and they weren't band members. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, Clemson, the number 1 team in the country, played Notre Dame, the number 4 team in the country, in what was Clemson did take the L, and I took the L in terms of picking Clemson. But so they played each other in South Bend at Notre Dame. Now, again, this Clemson team was without Trevor Lawrence, their star quarterback, who's going to be the projected number 1 pick in next year's NFL draft, and a bunch of good players on the defensive side. They lost a bunch of guys during the game, too. Notre Dame ended up beating them in overtime, and then the student section decided it was a good idea to storm the field because they had not beaten a number 1 team in 27 years. I don't know if that's at home or away or whatever. And I can tell you from a band standpoint, none of us liked it. So,
To be frank, yeah.
yeah, Savannah and Annabelle. I know Savannah. You had a lot of very a lot of takes about this. So, just
Yeah.
what was your like when you saw that happen? What was going through your mind?
Honestly, so I was watching that game. I was flipping back and forth between that game and the Oregon Stanford game. Um, but I flip over there and I see that happening, and like it was a jaw dropping moment for me. I was shocked and I was upset. Like I was angry about it, because it's just so irresponsible. And I know that like maybe these people were like checked for their symptoms or whatever, there was probably some process or something, but also like that doesn't matter. It's just completely irresponsible. And to have that then celebrated and glorified on the Notre Dame Athletics Twitter page, which you can check the video from the middle of the huddle on the field, was just really upsetting to me. And to think about all of the hard work that the Notre Dame band has put into being really diligent and keeping themselves safe and distance and masks so that they can be there to support their football team, and then having a couple team members be a part of that huddle. I just can't imagine. And it made me really frustrated as somebody who hasn't been able to even do band or watch any sports, to just see people be so blatantly disrespectful and just ignore all of the protocols. It just felt like a slap in the face, honestly.
Yeah, Annabelle, did you happen to get a chance to watch the game and or see? I'm sure you saw the aftermath of what happened. Um, How did you feel about how everything played out in South Bend?
So I didn't get to watch the game on TV. I think I mainly saw it in our group chat and then on Twitter. I did want Notre Dame to win. I don't think it should have played out like that. Whenever I first saw the video, I just kind of didn't really believe it at first. I was like, oh my God, like, is this like for real? Like, do they really go do this? And at first, off, you're like, oh, people storm the field, it's whatever. But then, like, I think people need to realize to work, and not only like just band, but within like the band director and each band program and each not only like the directors but all the members have put into being safe throughout this whole semester. And especially because like Savannah, you guys aren't even getting to play at the games in any capacity. I wouldn't say I was like very like heartbroken, but I did feel very heartbroken for all the people who don't have a season right now, having to watch that. This department was thinking, just like letting that happen and not having the proper precautions in store, because even though like their football team is tested all the time, those students aren't, and they're just being intermingled. And the fact that like we don't even really ever get to practice on our football field because they're scared of us contaminating it. And like no band gets to be out there, yet there gets to be thousands of students not wearing a mask, much less band people wearing bell covers and filters and masks and all of that. And it's just very disrespectful. And I think a lot of people just don't realize like the impact that it had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a lot of people are trying to like justify people rushing the field, which is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion. Like, of course, super cool, right? Whatever. Your football team beat Clemson. Clemson hasn't lost in a while. Clemson's really good. But in the grand scheme of things, it's just a football game. Like, there are much more serious things to consider. And I can't imagine being a Notre Dame fan, being at that game and thinking, it's a good idea for me to go out there with all these thousands of people to celebrate this football game. Like, I love football. I would give anything to be able to safely be at the football games and play with my band again. But it's just such a crazy situation, and I don't think there's any way you can justify it.
So from my perspective, you can justify the fact that the fans are going out there because this is something that hasn't happened in 3 decades, but it's really hypocritical from the band perspective of it, like you guys were talking about. I mean, bands weren't allowed on the field this year to prevent the spread of COVID. Like, that's why they are performing in the stands. That's why they have covers on all of the instruments, because there were spit tests done, and it shows how far spit traveled through instruments, and them not playing shows out on the field. Like, all of this stuff was done to prevent the spread of COVID. And schools have the authority to say whether they want to or not want to have fans in the stands for games. This is something that this is something that's decided by the school. So Notre Dame decided that they were going to have fans in the stands this season. The Notre Dame thing could have been prevented by A, having more security, or B, not even having fans in the stands. It is much harder to do that in a public place because that stadium, while it's a public place, is controlled by the university. Those people that are out there celebrating, they aren't controlled by anything. They are just going out there. I know the police can say, can block them off, but people will still find a way. At least in that stadium, they could have prevented a way of doing that, and they didn't do that. I really, that's a super spreader event. I really hope enough people were wearing masks, and I'm sure that there weren't people that were wearing masks, but I just hope that the situation can be litigated and that people can be safe, because that's the most important thing here is we don't want this to spread, and we want people to be safe.
Like with band, we have to be at least 6 feet apart. But then like for shouting, scientists say you need to be at least 12 to 15. So I can't even imagine, like what's going to come from that event. And then, another thing is I don't think like there's even going to be accurate numbers, because I'm sure the same people that stormed the field are the same people, going to parties and mingling with tons of others. So I don't think Notre Dame is even going to see like the repercussions they had from that.
Okay, so like I said, this episode is going to be talking about social justice, what bands have decided to do, changing fight songs, changing other things in their repertoire. So through the experience that you guys have had at your respective schools, and you can just try to go through it quickly, just to explain what has happened. But Savannah and Annabelle, what has the Husky Band done, and what has Marching Mizzou done, if anything, to change different songs, or possibly change things within what you guys are playing, the repertoire of your respective marching bands?
Yeah, so the University of Washington, before I was a student, removed their alma mater, so that meant that it was no longer sung at events or football games. Because I wasn't a student to kind of see what the university atmosphere was like during that, I don't really have a lot of insight to put into it, but I know that it was something that was done in order to promote inclusivity and like remove any like harmful language from things that represent the university. And I know that's a prevalent discussion that's going on this season and with a bunch of different schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then like within Marching Mizzou, every day we're trying to change and become more inclusive. And unfortunately, like Missouri isn't. Let me figure out how to word this. But unfortunately, Missouri, it isn't. There isn't a lot of diversity, especially like within our school. Just because because of the area we live in. And so we're always trying to be mindful of how we can also like bring more in, but also be respectful. And so this fall, after this summer, during like the big movement of the Black Lives Matter movement, we started an inclusion, diversity, and equity committee. And I'm a member of that, and it's really been really effective within our band. Every week we meet and we discuss things that we can do on and off the field. And one of those first things was actually, I think it was one of the first days of our full band camp. Our director told us about our shows, and the first one, it was kind of like an Americana show. I know it was like, it was like one of those, what are they called? Hannah can edit this part out. Arrangements, that's the word. But it was one of those arrangements where it just had a lot of different like American old melodies intertwined. And so within Marching Music, we have different committees. And the musicianship committee, they met and they felt that they were not going to be able to play, this arrangement. And, I got quotes from some of the students in the meeting. They said that they wanted to like unite as one. And the music, most of the songs, they were, highlights of minstrel shows. And so they didn't really feel like that accurately represented the band. So then they met with our director and then they cut the first show. But, hopefully like more bands start to do this. They start to look at not only like what the current songs are about to play mean, but what their alma maters and what their old tradition standing songs, what they used to mean and the impact they have on the students now.
Mm-hmm. So quickly, what has happened at Maryland in the time that I was there? So our state song. So we didn't change our fight song and our victory song, which most people think is our fight song. We have two different things, but that doesn't matter. Our state song, Maryland, My Maryland. We used to play that at games. They got rid of it, I think, due to racist overtones. And then our pregame fanfare, which is essentially a compilation of different of our fight song, our alma mater, the victory song, and then the state song, kind of like a mishmash of all four of them. They ended up having to modify that and change that to get rid of any Maryland by Maryland stuff within that. So we had to change that. And then the last thing was the battle hymn of the Republic, which we played before we played the national anthem. We ended up nixing that from the show. And then also, I don't know of other bands that have done this, but I know when I was there, I think it was either my sophomore or my junior year, our band director allowed some of the members. They said, or he said that you could kneel during the national anthem. So some band members decided to do that. That's all I know that has happened from Maryland, but I appreciate all the input that you guys have given from your respective schools, and I'm sure a bunch of other schools across the country. If you guys want to let us know either on Twitter or social media what different things have changed within your schools, please do. But from this is going to end our news segment. We're going to go into talking we talked with the Georgia band director, and then we talked with Michael Barasch, who is the co-founder of College Marching, our new partner. So please enjoy both of those, and then enjoy our Week 11 college football picks at the end. All right, everyone, welcome back to our main segment for the 6th episode of College Band Radio. We have with us right now the current director of athletic bands at the University of Georgia, Dr. Brett Bawcum. Brett, first off, how's everything going? How are you? And I guess as an aside from that, what's going on right now with the Redcoat Marching Band? How's the season been like for you guys with practicing and just the entirety of what's going on at Georgia right now?
Well, thanks for having me. First of all, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm glad you guys are doing this. It's a great service for the activity and for our community. So thank you all for putting what I know is valuable time into it. I'm fine. I think I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of over the pandemic. I wish it was finished. And as much as I love my family, I think it's all time for us to be out of the house for a while. And it kind of doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. As far as the band is concerned, it's a rough year. I mean, I'd be lying if I said everything was fine. We have never met as a full group, and we probably won't this fall. As you may know, COVID was particularly bad in Georgia in July and August. And I believe if the stats haven't changed, the University of Georgia had more COVID cases than any other university in America, at least as of a couple of weeks ago. So that's put us in a situation where we've had to think real hard about being good citizens of the community. I mean, we're 430 members strong, and we live in a community where there are a lot of people in lower socioeconomic levels, and we don't have our hospitals in Athens, Clarke County serve much of Northeast Georgia. And if we're not careful, if we were to have a bad outbreak in the band, we could literally cost people their lives. So we've had to be especially careful about how we rehearse and things of that nature. So far, we've had a lot of COVID cases in the band, but there have been 0 cases of COVID transmitted among band members, which is great. But, it's at the same time, they're strange days. We haven't met as a full group. We basically everybody's playing a minimum of 1 game, a half game for some people. And so that's about 100 and change at each ball game, because we only get 4 games because we give up that home game for Georgia, Florida. So it's a tough year, and there are a lot of things that are missing, but we're at least fortunate to get to meet and to play at games, because there are a lot of bands across the country that aren't even getting that.
I guess a big part of why we have you here today is to talk about Paris theme. So the arrangement that you guys play from the movie Gone with the Wind. For those that don't know, it's a movie that was put out in the 30s. The decision was made over the summer for you guys to discontinue playing that piece within the marching band. So first off, can you talk about the decision-making process to decide to not play that anymore?
So it is interesting to me, as somebody with a few years on you guys, to hear that it's necessary to explain what Gone with the Wind is, but it is. There's a generation gap there where, I was born in 73, and that was still several decades after Gone with the Wind, but it was a part of growing up in the South. You knew the movie and you'd seen it, and you might even have read the book, because it was really, I would say, I think it's fair to say that for the first half of the 20th century, it was Atlanta's biggest moment and probably Georgia's biggest moment. And that might stretch all the way until the 1996 Olympics. So, suddenly the world's attention is focused on this city and state that we love. And so there's a lot of love for that movie in the area, or there has been historically anyway. The band had been playing Tara's theme, we believe, since 1959. The movie was re-released to celebrate its 20th anniversary, and the band was playing Tara's theme as part of a show that they were playing actually at a Washington Redskins game, of all things. At the time, the NFL had no teams in the South, and so the team of the South was the Washington Redskins. So the band went up to play halftime there and played Tara's theme, and actually created the columns of Tara on the field, and it stuck pretty quickly. The appeal to members of the band over the years has been one. The arrangement was written by longtime director of the Redcoat Band, Mr. Roger Dance, and he is the de facto father of the modern Redcoat Band. It was he arrived in 1955 to find 25 people at his first rehearsal, and he really turned the band into what it has become. And so there's a lot of love, one, for him, and two, there's an embrace of that piece of music because he arranged it, and he passed away 22 years ago now. So it's one of those few things that we have from him that remain. There also, I think, there's a sense of romance about that particular movie, and that seems like a distorted thing to say about a piece of movie that relies on slavery, a piece of cinema that relies on slavery. But I think how you see it depends, largely on your perspective. Time changes things, and one of the big criticisms I've heard as a result of all this is criticism, usually from people older than me, but not necessarily, that I made a decision based on listening to the mob or listening to people whine about something, because there's clearly nothing racist about that movie, according to those folks. And I understand that perspective because they don't view movies and other media the same way that the current generation does, or that I do. So I can see why that would be a hard pill to swallow. But I've been thinking about it for 4 years. So I've been involved with the band at UGA. I entered as a freshman in 1992 and got all my degrees at Georgia and started acting as a graduate assistant in 98. So I've been around for a good chunk of this tradition anyway. And it only started occurring to me 4 years ago or so that I might not be that comfortable with this if I didn't look like I look. That my background might cause me to view this in a way that doesn't necessarily reflect the perspectives of everybody. And so I just started considering it at that point. I'd say, like I said, this is about 4 years ago, and thinking about the fact that there were Black students in the band playing Tara's theme. It was the band's signature piece, and it was the last piece we played every day. And so in this strange sort of way, if you look at it the way that I think it's possible and maybe likely to look at it, it looked like we were honoring this piece of music. Well, so Tara refers to the plantation in Gone with the Wind. And so if you do the math on that long enough, you start thinking about, okay, they're literally paying homage to a plantation. Why is that okay? And I can, I start thinking about, I'm not sure that I would be comfortable if I were a Black person. I don't think I'd necessarily be comfortable going to a school whose band embraced that particular piece of music. It's not that somebody has to look for nits to pick with us, but you know, we have a desire to recruit from a more diverse pool of applicants, and I have thought that one of the things that might cause us problems long term in that was continuing to embrace that piece of music. So that gained some steam with me. It really came to a head in October of 2019. The band was, we did a very unusual performance where 50 members went to New York City and performed in the Apollo Theater as part of a performance art festival called Performa. And the remainder of the band stayed in Athens, and we simulated a football game. And basically the people in the Apollo got to experience what it was like to be inside a marching band during a college football game. Among them, by the way, was David Byrne, the former lead singer of Talking Heads, who now has his own show on HBO that includes marching instruments and everything. And he was at that show. And so I've been curious about how that might have influenced him, but I don't really know. But that's just an interesting aside. So we're up there, and I'm up there in October trying to work out the last minute details for how we're going to do this show. And Paul Pfeiffer, the artist who was producing this exhibit, says, and so we'll end the show with you doing what you normally do in post game, and you'll play Tara's theme, and we're in the Apollo. And I said, Paul, we can't play Tara's theme in the Apollo Theater. And he said, why not? I said, Paul, this is the mother church of African American music. You can't do that. And there was some disagreement among several of us, but eventually I realized that there were people who agreed with me, and it was largely people who came at it from the perspective of Black Americans. We got to November, we finished that performance and everything. We're playing a game versus Texas A&M. We won a hard-fought game fairly late, and the team comes running to the sideline, and I'd already kind of had it in the back of my mind, maybe we don't need to be playing Tara at home anyway. And a football player named Jordan Davis, who's still on our team, he's a defensive tackle, I want to say, and he's a Black man. Jordan Davis comes up and stands in front of the Redcoat Band, and he makes a heart. Am I doing it right? No, there it is. He makes a heart at the band because he just loves the Redcoats. And there's nothing like seeing a 6 foot, God knows how many inches, and I have no idea how heavy, defensive lineman coming up to a marching band saying, I love you. But that really struck me in that moment. And I thought, am I going to reciprocate by playing a piece of music that supposedly celebrates a plantation? That's screwed up, man. That's twisted. So I called it off. And I called it off at the last minute, and this traditional piece of music, which had been the end of every game day, was basically ripped out from under the seniors at the last minute. There were some tears over that because we'd not had a big discussion about it. So at the Sugar Bowl on January 1st of this year, we left the stadium, did not play it. We normally wouldn't play it at a bowl game anyway, but I acknowledged to the band that I was thinking about this and that I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I also didn't think it was fair to just pretend like this had never happened. There were people who loved the piece of music, not because of some association, but because of Mr. Dance, who, by the way, Mr. Dance is the person who removed the word Dixie from the band's name in 1971 and took the piece of music Dixie from the band's repertoire at the same time. And he suffered amazingly terrible consequences because of this. I mean, his life was threatened on numerous occasions. He was hung in effigy on campus because of this. So we're trying, you want to honor the man, you want to keep a part of him in the organization, but at the same time, you need to continue his work. So we did play it one last time that night, and we did so only after I explained to them what I was thinking about, and we wanted to put this tradition to bed in a way that respected the past and Mr. Dance, but also acknowledged that it was time to move on. And then the actual decision itself didn't come until midsummer, and I knew I was going to do it, but I didn't want to do it without talking to the band directly. So I was going to wait until band camp. And then as the social unrest of the summer took place, and we started seeing things happen around us, I was really concerned about sending the message that, well, we're going to continue to play this stuff from Gone with the Wind, even though everybody around us is removing it, only because I am concerned about, and I'm specifically thinking here about black students who might want to be redcoats. I don't want them to have any misunderstanding about the way I feel about them, that we want them to be redcoats if they're interested. And so anything that could make them feel unwelcome is out. So if they're sitting there waiting on us to make a move, I did not want there to be any misunderstanding about that. So I went ahead and moved. I did not anticipate the fact that we would move on the same day that Florida would ban its gator bait chant, and that Aunt Jemima would change its branding and all this other stuff. So in hindsight, it looks like I was joining a crowd, and I really resent the living daylights out of that, because we'd been thinking about this a long time. And I mean, I kind of wanted to own it, and then everybody starts doing this other stuff. And now it looks like, oh, he's just, he's a lemming. No, I mean, this is something we've been thinking about for a long time, and it's something that we didn't take lightly, which I think makes it more meaningful.
Yeah. I think that was, even though it may have to you felt like something that was kind of following other people, I think to people in band programs and part of other schools around the country are really proud of the things that your school and your band and all the other bands that are making changes have done. I think it's definitely kind of fed into other programs, other schools and athletic departments, kind of re-evaluating what they have and the traditions that they have. I was curious what the kind of reception of from the fans or people that have been at football games for many years. What was the kind of reception about that? Was there any backlash for you about that?
Yeah, it was mixed, and it's mixed in a number of ways. There were reasonable disagreements, and then there were unreasonable disagreements, and there were reasonable agreements and pretty unreasonable agreements also. I heard from people that I genuinely respect very much, who said you're overdoing it, you're virtue signaling, and that's something I try to be pretty aware of myself, because it's a useless thing. And so I took that to heart. I thought real hard about whether that was the case. And I think I made a compelling argument back to that individual, that was actually a father and son who both had been in the band, that was not the case. But I got emails that were just basically nothing but nonstop cursing, saying that some pretty terrible things about myself and my lineage. But for the most part, people were supportive. There was overwhelming support among the students and among a lot of people in a lot of different areas, but it certainly wasn't unanimous, and I didn't expect it to be. And honestly, if it were, it would have been, if it were easy, then why would it matter? So, but I will also tell you that there was somebody on Twitter who said, because I pointed out in that letter that Mr. Dance had undergone a lot of strife. It really did affect the rest of his life when he took Dixie out of the book. And I acknowledged that in the letter, and someone accused me of going ahead and jumping in and trying to sort of cement myself in the history of the Redcoat Band by making a big move like this. And I'm like, okay. Number one, I've been around long enough. That's probably not a concern. Number two, there are way better ways to do it than this. But thirdly, I would not wish any version of what Mr. Dance went through on my family. But I don't think it compares to what he dealt with. It was pretty sick.
That's something that, since more programs obviously have been kind of joining in on that conversation, it kind of gives a kind of some insight into what these different schools' traditions are, like what they mean and how they can be more representative. So I think it's really important that you guys have had that conversation and have spurred that conversation for other programs. I was wondering as well, so that conversation starting about getting rid of Tara's theme and not playing it anymore at the games. So was that, as you had said, is that kind of originally your idea, or was that something that you had heard from the band about, and also really what was that kind of decision-making process like, and collaborating with the athletic department, because I know as an athletic band, sometimes the decisions kind of go through both the band department, uppers, and the athletic department. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
As far as who was involved in the decision-making process, I'm keenly aware of the fact that our memories are flawed. I don't remember having had the discussion with anybody before I brought it up, but it's possible that somebody had mentioned it at some point. I don't recall that. I remember asking myself that question in about 2014, and I think it was at band camp, and I discussed it with Malik Henry, who was our band captain at the time, and Malik is a black man, and his initial thought, as I recall, was, well, I appreciate the thought, but it doesn't strike me as something that bothers me. And I suspect that that's the case with a lot of students, because the context is so removed from Gone with the Wind. And that's one of the things that made that decision hard, was in the way we played it. I think it was very much divorced from the movie. It was a beautiful piece of music from a movie about the South at a time when there weren't very many of those. We sort of began to own it. In fact, if memory serves, when Mr. Dance wrote it, he got permission directly from Max Steiner, the composer of the score to Gone with the Wind, to do that. So that does make it kind of tough. But to my knowledge, I was the first one to think of it, but it's also possible that that's been on many minds over the years. In fact, I do know from several students, several alumni rather, that there were people who were uncomfortable with it for some time before this happened, and we just didn't hear about it. I'm trying to create an environment where people feel comfortable enough about things like this that they'll speak up. But I also know that social proof is a pretty powerful tool, or weapon, whichever, however it is you want to use it. And so when everyone around you seems to think that something is okay, it's real easy to think, yeah, this must be fine. But it turns out that some people had problems with it for a long time, but I'd never heard from them before. As far as involving anybody else, I am holding back some of the story here, because universities are political places, and sometimes some of these discussions that are that don't need to be public go public, and people end up having big issues. So I'm not telling you everything, but I'll tell you enough. When it became obvious that I felt like this needed a look, I started looking around to see if there were going to be problems with it on campus. Was I going to get in trouble with an administrator for doing this? And it was pretty evident to me that that was not going to be a problem. So that just left the path open. It doesn't mean I wouldn't have done it, but it does, you at least know what's at stake at that point. UGA is an interesting place in that we have an athletic association, which is separate from our university. There are a few schools, especially in the South, that do. And so it's a corporation that's owned by the state of Georgia, that's affiliated with the university, but much like a foundation, it's not actually the university itself. So we are a cooperative unit with athletics, and we receive a substantial amount of our funding from them, but we also retain decision-making authority that's separate from athletics. So no, I didn't tell them. Honestly, my wife knew, and I warned our Alumni Association board, and I let my boss know a week and a half, and I let our vice president for public information know, and they checked over the letter. Oh, it went through legal affairs too, just to make sure I didn't say something that was going to get me sued. And then that was that.
Well, thank you for speaking on that. I didn't mean to overstep or anything.
No, you have not overstepped at all. In fact, so this is one. If you were one of my students, you'd know that I'm just going to tell you the truth. Often to a point of being uncomfortable, because it's the only way I can live with myself. So if I have to not tell you everything, I'm just going to tell you that I can't tell you everything, but there are a few questions that are not worth being asked. And I think that's a perfectly reasonable one.
So I think I have kind of like a two-parter as like the last thing that I wanted to, or the last thing that we wanted to ask you. So in terms of, so you talked about the initial reception of people once you announced that you were discontinuing playing the song at games. How has the narrative shifted in those few months since Midsummer when you first announced that? And then on top of that, Georgia's not the only school that has, like Savannah talked about, Georgia's not the only school that has gone through these changes within marching bands, college marching bands across the country. Do you think that the decision that you guys made is going to possibly cause other schools, like create a domino effect of other schools possibly following suit and re-looking over what they have and saying maybe this isn't, over time, this isn't what we should be playing just due to circumstance and what's going on?
Yeah. So as far as looking back from several months after the fact, I wonder how COVID has affected the way it has been received, because I mean, it was a newsworthy event in a very news-filled year. So, like it took on a life of its own for a few days. I will not forget waking up the next day and having I'd received a text from a former student, and she said, "Well, that really blew up, didn't it?" And I thought, "What are you talking about?" And then she says, "ESPN question mark," and I'm like, "What?" And she then linked to an ESPN Africa article about it. And I'm like, seriously, this is transcontinental? Like, how can this? And I didn't know this would be big. I knew it was going to matter to our alumni, but I didn't think anybody else would care. And then, of course, the fact that it happens in the middle of all these others turned it into a bigger story than I think it would otherwise have been. But at the same time, a week later, the news cycle turns again because COVID was getting bad, and we don't know what's going to happen with college football, and a lot of attention has been taken off of it. We find ourselves as a band trying to replace it. We've had an arrangement of Georgia on My Mind for years that Tom Wallace, the great marching band arranger who wrote the arrangement that everybody plays of Hey Baby, among other things, is an alum of UGA, and he's our staff writer. And so Tom's had this Georgia on My Mind chart since the 70s that's just gorgeous. It's it's a home run. And it was easy to pick that because we already weren't playing it enough, and when we were playing it at homecoming at halftime and had to keep the volume down and weren't really giving it its due. But now that we're trying to replace Tara's theme, the way that Roger ended Tara was up. It's a nice big bombastic ending, fortissimo, and then we release it, and then the whole band says, "Once a dog, always a dog, how sweet it is," and then the drum line plays what we call the chant, and it was a big ceremonial deal. Right now, Georgia on My Mind ends down with these beautiful lush chords, but it does not have that big bombastic ending. So it's a beautiful substitution for it. It has not taken its rightful place yet. And I think some of the reason for that is that we need to consider whether the ending needs to be the same or not. So that's really been the biggest issue, is that it's just weird. It's just a different version of something, but that's like everything else, right? I mean, you're in a 75% empty stadium playing out of uniform for SEC. I'm like, everything is a weird version of everything else. Like, why wouldn't that be strange right now? So it's just one more thing at this point in the year. Whether or not it affects somebody else's ability to make that decision. People are complex, and we slap labels on each other. You're left or you're right or whatever. But in truth, those are shortcuts to making to putting people in a box, and sometimes that's useful. If you've ever read Danny Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow, he talks a lot about this. That we think fast because I don't need to add 2 + 2 every single time to know that it's 4. That's silly. And so, but I do the same thing when I judge people. There is utility in that response, and there's also danger in it. And so the same thing could be said for the way we think about music. Does that mean that every piece of music from a movie that portrayed slavery is one that we need to abandon? I don't know. I think you need to look at every situation on its own merits. If we start throwing out everything because of an association, I think sometimes you get rid of your allies in the process. I mean, it's, you could very well have a piece of music in a movie like that was trying to portray the sadness of it, and like, or take the beautiful music from Schindler's List, for instance. The association with the Holocaust does not, by its own virtue, mean that it's something we should stay away from. But if it seemed to celebrate it, or cause us to worship it, or be something that we admired, and we're likely to get to create the wrong impression or a negative impression, or to make somebody feel unwelcome, yeah, that's something you need to get rid of. But I do think it's important that we continue to look at every situation on its own merits, and not to overreact because it's the thing to do right now. I don't know. I really feel for the people at Texas right now, because like should you feel guilty for loving that piece of music? It's hard to argue that when it's been ingrained into your psyche, when it's become something that you associate with this university you love very much, and there aren't many people who love their university more than Texas Longhorns. It's real hard to just walk away from it, because it feels like you're walking away from something you've been loyal to. And I think it's important to honor that idea that, that if you do stop doing it, or that you do make a decision to remove it, I mean, you got to be healthy about it. You got to acknowledge the fact that it's painful too, just to maintain your own mental health, and also to remind your supporters and alums that we're not going around canceling traditions because we like canceling traditions. We're canceling traditions that cause problems because we want the tent to be bigger, and we want the tent to be somewhere near an appropriate size. And right now it is not. It's not here for sure. And one of the things we need to do to solve that is to make sure that our very identity is less likely to run someone off than maybe it has been in the past.
All right. Well, I first want to say thank you so much, Brett, for coming on. We really appreciate getting a chance to talk to you about this. I'm sure that this is something that you've talked to a lot of people about, but just to get it, a new perspective on this, and for everyone to hear about it, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us more about it. And it's actually funny that you mentioned Texas, because that was one of the things that hopefully we're going to talk about in this episode, was the Eyes of Texas and what's going on right now with the Longhorn Band. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. We did want to say, is there anywhere that anyone listening, if they want to find the Redcoat Marching Band anywhere on social media, what are the links, where can they find you guys and what you guys do?
Absolutely. We are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at UGA Redcoat Band. You can find our somewhat poor website, which one of these days we'll get a nice revision, at bands.uga.edu. And if anybody needs to contact me, they can use my email address, bbawcum@uga.edu. If I can help anybody else navigate a situation like this, it'd be nice to be useful.
Again, thank you so much, Brett, for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Cool. Go Terps and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
Welcome back to the final part of our main segment for this 6th episode of College Band Radio. Today, or right now with us, we have Michael Barasch, the co-founder of collegemarching.com. First off, Michael, how are you? How's everything going?
Good. Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, Michael gave us the opportunity to come on here to partner up with College Marching to create this podcast and really help grow it more. So again, first off, we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do this and to continue to grow it more. But also, we have you on here to talk about what you know with the Eyes of Texas controversy going on right now with the at the University of Texas. So from what you know, Michael, what is currently going on with the Longhorn Band with the playing or not playing of that song this season?
Yeah, so it's a tough situation. There's multiple sides, if you will, and it has not gone well, I think, for anyone. Right now, you have a band that is not going to be performing at any home games for the rest of the season. So the Longhorn Band, in agreement with the university, has decided that they're just not going to come play for the games, and everyone's kind of agreed to that. So it's a difficult situation. I think you have an alumni base that's very passionate about their school. They're very passionate about what the Eyes of Texas means to them. And then you have a band that is very passionate about supporting their fellow band members. And, there are members of the band who are Black or are, just friends and say, hey, you know what? If you feel uncomfortable playing the song because of its heritage and what it might mean to you, I stand with you. And I'm not going to perform it either. And I think that has created a situation of support on one side and then, anguish on the other side. And, for right now, you have the band's not coming to the games. The university is playing the fight song and a recording at the end of the game. And you're just having a situation where support for the band, especially in the older alumni ranks, has really dwindled in a drastic way. I mean, you can see it when we post something about it, like an update on what's going on. Recently, the announcement came out that the band would no longer attend any home games for the rest of the season. And we posted that, and we take a very neutral slant, right? We're not trying to take a side on this, even though we are a band page. We're trying to get the information out there of what's going on. And, just posting at the social media, I mean, a million comments of people, clearly divided on this. And I think it's a situation right now where there is no right answer. I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong answer either. But it's a situation where it depends on, how you interpret the origins of that tune and whether the origins of that tune still have merit in today's world now over 100 years later. I've had a chance to, be very well connected to the Longhorn Band. College Marching has visited the Longhorn Band more than any other band in the country because we are based in Austin, Texas. I have a great relationship with the directors, with the students, with the alumni base. And we've heard it from all of them. We've heard their stories, their sides. I've heard it from non-band alumni too, who have come out and just said, like, listen, I used to love the Longhorn Band and my support now is gone. And then you have people who say, I need to support the Longhorn Band now more than ever. So it really is a dividing issue that I don't see being resolved really anytime soon. I just hope that the university can come together, can work with this band students, can understand what they're doing, why they're choosing not to play the song, and create some type of, I won't say agreement, but understanding between the two that says, okay, let's move forward in playing these things or, creating this atmosphere that you guys are famous for creating. And we won't require, this to be played by the band because I just can't see them picking up their instruments and playing it anytime soon. And that's okay. They're allowed to do that. And that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's a very hard spot to be in. Not only as like a band member, but also like a staff member and an alumni. You guys, it seems like the whole thing's just being torn apart. So would you be able to provide any insight through like the decision making process of like, because I know originally it started in June during like the big momentum of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I believe I read that it started with a petition from the football team. But do you know any insight on how it started within the band and like when those conversations first started taking place?
Yeah. So, I mean, it did start when the football team kind of put out their, list of grievances and things that they wanted to see changed. The university is a progressive university. They're not one to, have any animosity towards any type of group of students or anything like that. UT Austin's a fantastic institution. And I think that they were aggressive in trying to sit down with the players, understand what they wanted. I understand that this is not something that was isolated to just athletics. There were demands from student organizations to other parts of campus as well. Just said, hey, listen, there are other deficiencies here, and here. We need to be addressing this across campus. There are buildings on campus. I think they call it the Robert Lee Moore Building, RLM, has now been changed. And that was a math science building, right? So nothing to do with athletics. So they've done a really good job of trying to address this. A couple years ago, UT Austin had an issue with Confederate statues on campus. Statues were removed, created a huge uproar, protests on campus, goes on and on. But they've been very good about hearing the cries of the students and maybe alumni at the same time, trying to create a situation that is agreed to on both sides, or get rid of it, right? Which is what they did with RLM. And so that list kind of came out, the demands came out from the athletes, and as one of them was not having to stay at the end of the game to do the Eyes of Texas because of the origins of the song. And it's 100-year history when it was played in with the minstrel undertones for racial related discrimination. And that really kind of jump started a little bit, because if you think about it, well, if the team's not going to stand and play for this song that the band plays, I think it sparked this idea in the band that was like, hey, the football team doesn't want to do this tradition with us anymore because they don't feel comfortable with the song that we provide for them. So why do we have to play it? We don't agree with it either. So then over the summer, there was a Dallas Morning News article that came out. I guess they got to the drum major and had an interview with the drum major, and she came out and said that she would not conduct the Eyes of Texas at the end of the game. And that's really where this kind of really blew up. And people started to realize, like, whoa, okay, the band, like the drum major is not going to conduct it. What's going to happen? The team's going to come over, they might stand there, and then the drum major is going to just not play. Like, what's going to happen? And I think that fed a little of the craziness. People just speculating. And that's what started the conversation, I think, of trying to figure out. Longhorn Band created a student organization. I think it's LHB Blacks or LH Black, something like that. But it's Longhorn Band Black Student Organization, which is really very well supported by the members themselves. And many of those students are, folks who just said, listen, I'm going to put my instrument down for this, or I'm not going to play. And I think it created a snowball effect, which as you led into the season, the band actually wasn't at the first couple games, not because of the controversy. They weren't at the first couple games because they actually didn't get their PPE in time in order to distribute that out, test it, and get ready for it. They were going to play for, I think maybe the first home game they were going to play for was like the Baylor game or something like that. It's like maybe 2 home games in. But the big thing that happened was Texas played OU. They lost in double overtime or whatever at that game. At the end of that game, the only player who stood out for the Eyes of Texas was quarterback Sam Ehlinger. That sparked a huge uproar from the fan base against the players and the coaches. And the fact that they lost just kind of heightened it. But it created more dialogue around, well, what's going to happen at the game? The band's not playing. The band's not there. What's going on? And I think eventually that it came out that the band was not going to play the Eyes of Texas. They tried to negotiate or have a discussion, and eventually it was decided that not enough students were willing to come. They didn't have instrumentation, the band that they were supposed to put together, and so they decided to stay home, and that's where we are.
So, Michael, for those that don't know what the Eyes of Texas is and what this, the significance, the historic, the history behind it, can you go into more detail as to when it was instituted, what it, just what it means to the Longhorn Band and what it means to the university when it's played?
Yeah, sure. So I don't have all the history on it. I can do the best that I know. So I believe it's late 1800s. The song came around. It was initially created and performed at minstrel shows with individuals who clearly were mocking or in some way making reference to African Americans. It is to the tune of "I've Been Working on the Railroad," which obviously has a huge connection back to Black workers working on the railroad and in American history. So already there, it's a little bit unkosher, if you will. And over time, the lyrics are also a bit shady as well. I think that the person who wrote the song had some connections to potentially some other songs that clearly were anti-Black and stuff like that. So there's kind of a conundrum here of issues with this song. Now, you could make the case that over time, clearly people had no idea the origins or the history of this song. I mean, when I marched in college, I played the fight song because I was told that this is our fight song. I never asked who composed it, when it was written, what it meant when it first was published. I had no idea. I was like, this is just the fight song. We play it at the end of touchdown. We play it at pep rallies. Like, you just play it. You don't ask any questions. So I think that's how it's been for years. Everyone just like, this is the school song. This is what we do. And so for probably, for 100% of the fan base, I think that no one ever really truly knew the origins of that song. Maybe a couple professors or some historians might have known it, but the fan base, the people who graduated, go to football games, put the hook 'em horns up and sing that song, had no idea what the connection was to it. And if you talk to them, I've talked to a lot of them, they'll tell you like, I had no idea, and I don't even believe it, right? And so, the band side is one that's very easily to understand, right? It's black and white. It's very easy to understand. The alumni side is a little more complex, where you have to remember that if you grew up going to a Texas football game, singing the Eyes of Texas, thinking there's nothing wrong with it, now all of a sudden somebody says, not only is there something wrong with it, but if you support it, you're a racist, right? I mean, that's how people jump to that right away. So you're pretty much telling generations and generations and generations of Texas fans that, like, if you want to hear the Eyes of Texas, you're a racist. That's a really extreme, I think, argument to have against that song, because I don't think that anyone, a fan or alum, really believed that. For them, it was just like this rallying call, this bringing together all of these fans. I mean, if you go to a Texas football game, when they play that, everyone has got doesn't black, white, Indian, Asian, Latin, doesn't matter, male, female, gay, straight, doesn't matter. Everyone's got their horns up singing it because no one thought anything was wrong with it. And so for years, you just assumed that this is part of your identity, right? And now it's gone. So you can understand why people are upset about this and may not support it, because you're erasing a piece of their history and connection to an institution that has brought them potentially education, sports fandom. Maybe they got married to somebody that like their kids go there. I mean, like, their whole universe is engrossed in this connection to the university, and the song that they might get teary-eyed when they watch 100,000 people sing together, is now gone. And so I think that that's, it's tough sometimes to maybe take a step back and start to think about the other side and what they're going through and having to try to internalize and work through it. But at the same time, the students of the time, students today, do not feel comfortable with the song. The players do not feel comfortable. The band does not feel comfortable. So is it the university's mission to serve alumni or to serve students? And I think that's where this is going to go. They have to serve the students that are the Longhorns of today. And eventually, we're either going to get past this or this is going to continue to fester and snowball for years and years. But I think right now that they're going to move into that, probably eventually they're going to move towards that, potentially changing of the guard, if you will, from a fight song perspective. Now, the university president and university administrators have come out and said that they're moving forward with the fight song, trying to work through that. We'll see how long that lasts. But, it's a situation right now where the current students, the current Longhorns, many of them feel this way, and they will be heard because they are the customers of today.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great point. You brought up how it really feels like it's either like the students who go there now or the alumni. I know with a lot of institutions, a lot of, they typically go with alumni because they, give them their money and their fundraising, all of that. So I definitely think, we're going to see what happens, hopefully soon. But like you said, it might take several years. So would you be able to talk about like how the narrative has changed since it first brought up? Like, has there been any big shifts, like anyone changing their mind now, like either within the band or alumni or the community, since they're no longer playing at games? Because I know originally it was just, oh, we won't play the fight song, but now, unfortunately, those students are having to sacrifice, their whole season, which was already cut short. And I know, like, for me personally, I would be heartbroken because that's how I was whenever I first found out that we might not have had a season. So has anything really shifted within the band, or are they still on the same momentum?
I don't know. I can only imagine what they're going through. My college marching experience was the best 4 years of my life, hands down. And to have that taken away from you, especially in a season that was already like half taken away from you, is is sad. It really is, and unfortunate. But I have to stand with the students, and I have to commend them because they're standing up for something that they believe in. They're supporting their fellow band members, and are in essence sacrificing a year of the greatest experience of their lives for something that they believe in. And so, I can only imagine maybe some of the internal struggles that some of them have gone through over this. Because guess what? The marching band's going to have people from all walks of life, from all across this country, different political beliefs, and some may be not knowing which way to go, right? And that's okay too. But I think that the overwhelming majority of the band is together on this, is very much in support of their fellow band members, and I really, really, really hope that they can come, the university can come to the band and work through this with them, because to think about fall 2021 without the Longhorn Band in a potentially normal year is just awful. I can't even imagine it. I can't imagine it for the fans who will be coming back to football for the first time, really, like in a year. They have fans at the game, but like the majority are not coming back for games. And for those students, some of them who might be like taking a victory lap, or just wanting to get one more marching season in before they graduate, or the freshmen who are coming in for the first time, having dreamt of marching out of the tunnel and being part of that environment, who maybe won't get that in their freshman year, have to wait till sophomore year. So I'm really hoping that this gets worked out and we see the Longhorn Band back in action, and this gets behind us in some way. But you're right. I think that it's you have the alumni who pay the bucks and donate the big money, that the university obviously also has to answer to, and it's a challenge. It's a real challenge right now.
Michael, so as a last thing, I know that you've kind of already addressed it in some aspects, but where does this situation go from here? Where does the band go from here? Where does the university go from here? Just from what you know and what you're speculating as things go on, how long do you think that this is going to last? How long are negotiations going, between band members and all that stuff? Is there a possibility that they might come back and play this season if things get resolved within these next few weeks, or is this something that's going to last through the rest of this year and into 2021?
I hope that they'll come back. I hope that this can be agreed to, this week, and next home game they're in the stands. I really hope that. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to happen. I would bet money that it's not going to happen. I see that the decision from the university, for the band to, not attend, I think that was a decision that was made probably together on that. And, but yeah, I hope that they'll come back. I hope that this doesn't bleed into potentially like basketball band or other pet band opportunities. Whether those will actually even happen, who knows? Because of COVID, I for the sake of the students and their experience and what the marching experience has meant for our, you two, for myself, for all the Longhorn Band alumni and current members, how special it is. I hope that this is able to be worked out, and they're able to get back to what they love to do with some modifications, right? I mean, they play the Eyes of Texas in a little short little diddle throughout the game. They've obviously played the full Eyes of Texas, I think, both at pregame and postgame. And so the Eyes of Texas is really woven into the Longhorn Band kind of playbook, right, throughout the game. And so they will have to make changes if they're no longer going to be playing it. And I just, more importantly, I hope that if they do come back, that the fans and the fellow students will rally behind them and not hold anything against them for standing up for something that they are passionate about and supporting a fellow band member or band members, sorry, multiple students, obviously. I just hope that the fans and the alumni, more importantly, are able to move past, any grudges that they're holding against the band, because I have seen some, like I said, some nasty comments about, well, that's it, we don't need the band anymore, or get rid of the band director, or who cares, right? We don't need them anyway. And it's fueled fire to those people who, have always kind of had that, disrespect for the band and don't care about the band. Like, I don't come to the game to watch the band. It's like, how you're seeing a game day atmosphere without the band, and you can see that the life and the spirit, is not the same. You can pump in as much music as you want from the press box, but there is nothing that can truly replace the soundtrack of college football, which is the marching band and the heartbeat of the student section. I don't even COVID, they're letting a lot of students into those games at Texas, more than most other universities across the country. And without the band there, it's a completely different environment. So I'm hoping and praying that we'll see them back in action, sooner rather than later. But hopefully this can be worked out over the spring and summer, and we see the Longhorn Band back in action in fall 2021 post-COVID.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael, so much for coming on to talk about this. For those that don't know, you can find College Marching on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter. Just look up College Marching, and also collegemarching.com. And Michael will be posting stuff of our podcast as we go. So again, Michael, thanks so much for coming on. And for everyone who's listening and watching, stay tuned as we go into our Week 11 college football picks. And welcome back to our final segment of this 6th episode, our Week 11 college football picks. I believe we have, 5 games to go over this week. So we are all going to give our picks momentarily. Just wanted to quickly say, so Savannah, are you excited to have football this weekend?
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think it'll happen. I think it'll be fine, but it's at home. Not like I'll be there, but it's at home. So it's cool to have it happening within a mile of my house. I don't know. But
well,
yeah, I'm excited.
hopefully for your sake it'll happen, because I know that the Pac-12 was kind of a little bit shaky this week, but
yeah, it's at 8 p.m. So stay up late.
After dark?
Yeah.
Best time.
After more dark, even darker this time.
All right, so for this week's picks, we are going to start off in Blacksburg, Virginia, with number 9 Miami at Virginia Tech. We will start with Craig. Craig, who do you have in this matchup?
So I'm going to take Virginia Tech. I think that, they're not ranked, but they're still a very good team. And so Virginia Tech, I think, is going to win it this week.
Hannah.
You guys know how I feel about those Golden Hurricanes. Even though they have ruined me every time, I'm still going to pick the Golden Hurricanes, so Miami.
They're just the Hurricanes.
Miami's just regular Hurricanes.
Yeah, they're just regular Hurricanes. We are going to get to the Golden Hurricanes, just not now.
Okay,
you got to wait a little bit.
Peasant Hurricanes. I picked them.
Contain your excitement for Golden Hurricanes, but we'll get there momentarily. Jason, who do you have?
Well, Craig picking Virginia Tech was just a bad omen, so I'm going to go with Miami.
All right, Savannah.
Yeah, I'm picking Miami. I picked Virginia Tech last week, and then that was a bad idea for me, so I'm not going with them this week.
No, but see, they're going to be angry.
No, they're not. They're going to lose.
It's stolen from them. They want that win.
Go Canes.
Annabelle.
I'm going to go with Miami, too.
Yeah, I'm also going with Miami. They had a really, really good comeback win
against... You're all going to regret it.
Hey, Miami had a good comeback win against NC State, and Virginia Tech had literally the worst inning that you could possibly have in a college football game. Let's go to our next game. We have number 11 Oregon coming off a big win on Saturday Night Football against Stanford at Washington State, who beat Oregon State. Sorry, Beavs.
Sorry, Beavs.
Sorry.
Go Beavs.
Hannah, who do you have?
I am going to go with Oregon once again because of Mandrake. I think Mandrake was the power behind them beating Stanford.
Only Mandrake, no one else.
Fears nothing and nobody. I'm picking Oregon.
Jason.
I'm just going with Oregon. Even though I just started calling it Oregon, I used to call it Oregon.
On purpose?
Nope.
Did you get this far and
no.
nobody corrected you, or were you just simply vibing with your own interpretation?
Annabelle's
Nope.
face when
I
you
got this
said
far,
that.
and then I would just said it one day, and then this one guy from Spokane was just like, I used to call it Spokane too. Sorry for
Oh,
everyone
God.
up in the northwest, but he was like, "Why are you saying Oregon?" And I'm like,
Spokane, Oregon.
in their fight song, they say Oregon. They don't say Oregon.
Well,
fair.
Fun fact.
Spokane's
Okay.
not pronounced Spokane.
Savannah, who do you have?
This sucks for me because I don't like either of these teams. These are both my worst enemies. Here's the thing, though. Washington State has this rookie quarterback. He's literally a freshman. They aren't really stacked there. You know, they beat the Beavs this weekend, but I'm not really sure how they can do against Oregon. I do think Oregon is going to be they're overrated. Oregon's overrated, but I think they will come out on top. Oregon's going to win.
Every team is overrated.
Pac-12 is overrated.
According to Savannah.
Football's overrated.
I'm allowed to say that.
All right, Annabelle.
I'm also of Oregon. I like ducks.
Not the O.
Do you like
Craig.
Mandrake?
Don't throw the O.
specifically?
They're part yellow.
Don't forget Mandrake.
Yeah.
Don't
Is
forget about
Mandrake a
Mandrake.
duck or a man duck
Yes.
monster
He's a
hybrid?
spandex
Yes.
costume.
The answer is yes. Craig.
You know what? Because I'm the bad omen here, I'm just gonna.
Don't say
you
it.
dare.
I'm gonna take Oregon
No! Craig! Why?
because if I'm going down, y'all are going down with me.
That's fair. I don't want Oregon to win.
No,
so.
that's a good. Hey, I'm gonna go with Oregon because Drake had that recent music video at the Nike headquarters, and that's pretty much like Oregon 2.0. They have like a new uniform every week. Sometimes it's a little bit excessive, sometimes it's cool. Last week, a little bit excessive.
Sometimes.
Next game, we are going to the Golden Hurricanes, Hannah. This is your time to shine. We have number 19 SMU at Tulsa. Jason, we're going to start with you. Who do you have?
I am gonna take SMU. No reason, just a feeling.
Hey, sometimes it's just a feeling. That's all it is. That's all you need. Savannah.
I'm picking SMU. I think it's the safer pick for me. I really messed it up last week. So, because I went out on a limb, so I'm not doing that this week. So SMU's going to win.
Annabelle.
I don't know. What's the mascot for Tulsa?
I don't know the mascot, but they're called the Golden Hurricanes.
It's probably Hurry the Hurricane. Goldie the Golden Hurricane.
Oh, no.
Herbert the Hurricane.
I don't. No, it shouldn't be any of that.
I'm gonna switch it up and I'm gonna go Tulsa.
Okay. Upset brewing possibly in Tulsa. Craig.
So Tulsa, if I'm not mistaken, is coming off of 3 weeks of canceled games or postponed games.
Mm-hmm.
SMU's only coming off of 1 week of postponement. So Tulsa not having played in a month, I think they're going to be lacking a little bit. So I think SMU's the safe option here.
Hannah, who are you going to go with?
Golden Hurricanes. Just powerful. So that's it. I don't
They
know.
are quite heavy.
Yes,
they
they
are
are
quite
very
heavy.
heavy.
Dense. Just dense.
Very dense.
Dense.
So SMU looked really good against Temple this week. I love Shane Buechele with all of my heart, and I wish he would get more respect. I'm going to go with SMU on this one. Now we're going to go to a game of which Jason is quite fond of, for one of the teams at least. Number 23 Northwestern. This is their first time in the top 25 in quite some time. At Purdue, who is coming off of a week where they didn't play. Jason, what was the situation with that?
Yeah, unfortunately, Wisconsin got racked with some COVID cases, so they had to cancel the game against us.
So for this one, we're going to start with Savannah. Who do you have in this matchup between the Wildcats and the Boilermakers?
I'll pick Purdue. I'll go with that 1 to 300 whatever bet for the playoff.
We're gonna no, it's the championship. We're not just gonna.
Oh, the championship.
300 to 1 odds that Purdue wins the championship.
Sure. Why not? I'll pick Purdue.
I hope it's Purdue versus Mizzou. and then we can have a drum off.
Purdue, Maryland.
They're just both the drums are at center.
That's the game. That's the game. Is just the drums.
I would love that.
Annabelle, who do you have?
I'm no Northwestern.
I hate you.
Oh wow!
But I'm gonna like secretly be rooting for you, Jason, and for your smaller drum.
Oh, it's because you have to keep yourself on top of the picks. Is that why?
Okay, well maybe if you wouldn't have attempted to steal my identity last week.
I have no idea what you're talking
bass
about.
drum questions. I support Annabelle's pick.
If you were first, then you would understand, but it's okay.
The power's already gone to her head.
But I do support Purdue going to the championship.
Craig.
Just not this game.
So I don't know who gave Northwestern the permission to be 3-0. Out of just sheer necessity to just keep some sense of normalcy, I need to pick Purdue because Northwestern should be at the bottom with Rutgers in that 7th place to the West, and we're 7th place to the East. That's how things should be.
All right, Hannah.
I'm gonna go with Purdue. Hammer down, boiler up.
Jason, so you're going with Northwestern, right?
No, I am actually full on going with Purdue, as you might imagine.
No, it's lies.
Yeah. I think Peyton Ramsey, our whole Purdue team has a beef with Peyton Ramsey after he won at Purdue with IU, and then he's coming back, and I think they're just gonna they're not gonna steamroll him, no pun intended, but I think it'll be a close game, but I think we're gonna win in the end.
The pun was 100% intended on that one. we all know, Jason. So I'm trying to get up to the top of that leaderboard with Annabelle, and I know I shouldn't be picking the same thing as Annabelle, but I am, because I like Northwestern this year. I think they're a good team. I mean, they steamrolled Maryland, and then Maryland has now proceeded to win 2 games, so maybe that was a fluke game. I don't know, but Northwestern has looked really good. So our last game this week is going to be TCU at West Virginia, TCU coming off of a win, West Virginia coming off of a close loss against Texas. So for this one, we're going to start with Annabelle. Annabelle, who do you have in this matchup between the Horned Frogs and the Mountaineers?
I have the TCU. I'm trying to do a frog hand puppet, but I haven't gotten it yet. But I'm gonna get it.
Oh wait, is that what you're looking at?
Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
I'm trying to figure it out. That's what I've been doing for the past 2 minutes. But TCU, because frogs. Go Frogs.
Craig.
You know what? Annabelle tends to win, and I generally am at the bottom of the pack, so I'm just gonna follow her pick blindly. Go Frogs.
Tends to win. She took the lead in 1 week.
I know.
She had a really good week.
Have been leading the recent weeks.
No, she had a really good week though.
Go against IU.
IU sucks.
Even if they were the number 1 team in the nation, playing the worst team in the nation, I would still go against them.
You got give credit where credit's due. That's all I'm saying. Hannah.
I am going to go with TCU. I have a friend in their marching band, so go Horned Frogs.
All right, I like it. Jason, who do you have?
I'm gonna go with West Virginia. I think they should have beaten Texas, but I still think they're very underrated, and I think they can pull off a win against TCU.
As Country Roads is sung very, very quietly in the background, we'll go to Savannah.
Well, so I was thinking the same thing as Craig, where I was like, okay, if Craig's pick is the bad omen, then maybe Annabelle's pick is the good omen. But I don't want to root for a frog.
You guys are giving me too much credit.
I don't want to root for a frog, so I'm going to pick West Virginia.
I think it's going to be an even split here, 3-3.
Hand puppet's really hard.
I am also going with West Virginia because Texas is so overrated and they're a fluke. All right, so since we're wrapped up for this week, we wanted to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in so far for the first 5 episodes of this first season of us with College Marching. We really appreciate all the support that you guys have given us, and we are really excited for these last couple episodes. College basketball season is coming up, so do be very prepared for us to talk a lot about college basketball. I know we're going to try to get a lot of good people on to talk about that. And I know that a couple of us on here very much enjoy pep band and college basketball. But Hannah, where can people find College Band Radio on social media and other platforms?
You can find College Band Radio at College Band RDO on Twitter, because radio, as you may recall, is one character too long. On Instagram, you can find us at College Band Radio.
From all of us, stay safe, stay healthy, please wear a mask, and we'll talk to you guys next week for episode 7.